Captain Marina Mara Hayes sat behind the wheel of her armored Humvee, scanning the horizon through darkened goggles. The desert sun had begun its slow descent, casting long, jagged shadows across the dunes. It was breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of beauty that made you forget, for a moment, that you were in a war zone. But Mara didn't have time for daydreams. Her gut told her that danger was closer than it looked. The radio buzzed, faint at first, then louder. "Command to all units. Situation escalated in Grid Delta. Airstrike confirmed. Expect heavy engagement. Repeat, heavy engagement." Mara felt her pulse quicken. Airstrikes weren't unusual in these regions, but the speed of escalation was alarming. Just yesterday, her unit had been stationed near Kuwait, delivering supplies to civilians. Today, the border had turned into a battlefield. She took a deep breath and scanned her team. Private First Class Liam Carter adjusted his helmet nervously. Sergeant Rosa Delgado checked her rifle one last time, her hands steady, her jaw tight. Mara nodded at them, silently conveying what words couldn't. Eyes open, one step at a time. We survive together. The convoy rolled forward, tires crunching over the cracked asphalt, dust curling in their wake. The desert air was dry yet heavy with tension. Mara had been trained for this. Every shot fired, every step taken in war had been drilled into her muscle memory. Yet nothing in training prepared her for the weight of responsibility she now carried. Her mind flicked back to the news feeds from the morning. U.S. intelligence had confirmed that Iranian militia forces were moving faster than expected, targeting strategic supply routes. Civilians were trapped in small towns along the way, and Mara's convoy was their only hope: humanitarian aid. Food, water, medicine, a lifeline that could save hundreds. And then the first missile hit. It wasn't aimed at her convoy, at least not yet, but the shockwave rattled her vehicle and sand sprayed over the windshield like shards of glass. Mara's eyes narrowed. She could hear the faint whine of drones overhead, searching for movement. Her team tensed instinctively, each soldier a bundle of nerves and discipline. "Report," she barked into the radio. "All units accounted for. No casualties so far, Captain," came the reply. Mara allowed herself a fraction of relief before it vanished. Relief in war was a dangerous luxury. She adjusted her goggles and scanned the horizon. A small plume of smoke appeared in the distance, not large, but enough to signal trouble. The convoy approached a ridge overlooking a valley. From this vantage point, the desert seemed endless, a sea of sand and shadow. But Mara could see something else: movement. Figures darting along the dunes, shadows of enemy forces closing in. She leaned close to the radio, her voice steady but firm. "Bravo team, flank right. Alpha team, stay tight. Eyes on every movement. We don't know what's waiting for us in that valley." Private Carter swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "Captain, what if we're outnumbered?" Mara met his gaze through the rearview mirror. Her eyes were hard, unwavering. "Then we fight smart, and we survive." Her own hands trembled slightly, betraying the storm inside. Every mission carried risk, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about strategy or protocol. It was about life and death, not just hers, but the civilians relying on them, the soldiers depending on her leadership, the lives that would be lost if she faltered. The convoy descended into the valley. Sand whipped against the vehicles as a sudden gust of wind picked up. Mara's Humvee lurched, tires skidding over loose dunes. She gritted her teeth, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Ahead, the valley floor was littered with debris, remnants of previous skirmishes, charred vehicles, and abandoned checkpoints. "Command, we've reached the valley. Visibility low, terrain rough. Requesting guidance," she said, her voice calm but every word measured. "Mara, proceed with caution. Intelligence indicates multiple IED threats. Move slow, stay alert." Mara nodded to herself. Slow, alert. Every step a calculated risk. She knew that in this environment, a single misstep could cost lives. She glanced at Rosa Delgado, who gave her a small nod, silent confirmation that her team was ready. Suddenly, a glint caught her eye, a small reflective surface among the sand, an IED. Her stomach tightened. "Everyone halt," she shouted. The convoy screeched to a stop, dust curling around the tires. Mara leapt from her vehicle, signaling the others to stay back. She carefully marked the explosive with a bright flag, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. This wasn't her first encounter with IEDs, but each one carried the same fear. One wrong move and it could end everything. As she secured the area, a faint radio signal came through. The civilians they were escorting had been spotted in a nearby town. Their faces, terrified and desperate, flashed in Mara's mind. Her resolve hardened. "We move forward," she said firmly. "Every second counts. Lives are at stake." The convoy began moving again, carefully navigating the valley floor, every soldier alert, every eye scanning for threats. Mara's mind raced, planning escape routes, anticipating ambushes, calculating risks. She was leading more than vehicles. She was leading hope. Hours passed and the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky in violent streaks of red and gold. Mara's team moved silently, shadows among shadows. The distant rumble of artillery shook the ground, a grim reminder that the war had already reached far beyond what anyone had expected. She allowed herself a fleeting thought. "This is it. This is where I prove who I am, not just as a soldier, but as a protector, a leader, a shield." Night fell fully, bringing a chilling wind that cut through uniforms and armor alike. The convoy reached a narrow pass between two rocky outcrops. Mara slowed, her hand on the radio. "Everyone, eyes open. No mistakes. One false step and we're sitting ducks." The desert was silent now, eerily so, except for the distant drone buzz and the faint murmur of enemy forces. Mara felt a weight on her shoulders, the lives in her care, the mission, the war itself. But fear did not paralyze her. Fear sharpened her senses, honed her instincts, and steeled her will. As the convoy crept forward, Mara knew that whatever awaited them on the other side of this pass, it would test everything she had trained for and everything she had become. Because when the United States and Iran collided and the world plunged into chaos, Mara Hayes was about to become more than a soldier. She was about to become a force unto herself. And in the shadows of that desert night, as the wind whispered secrets of danger yet to come, Mara's story, a one-woman army story, was only beginning. Night had fallen over the ruined city, swallowing streets and shadows as Captain Olivia Liv Carter crouched behind a pile of shattered concrete. The orange glow of distant fires painted the walls, highlighting the skeletal remains of buildings. Every sound felt amplified. A distant siren, the groan of collapsing metal, the soft scuffle of something moving in the darkness. Liv's squad was tense, alert to every shadow, every twitch in the debris around them. "Captain, I don't like this," Specialist Ramirez whispered, glancing at the map on his tablet. "We've been moving for hours, and the streets are crawling with enemy patrols. Every corner could be our last." Liv's eyes scanned the ruined cityscape. She understood the fear, but hesitation could cost lives. "We keep moving," she replied, voice low but firm. "Our mission is to locate that UAV. It has intel that could save countless lives, including the civilians trapped here. No hesitation. Eyes sharp, heart steady." Her squad nodded, each member gripping their weapons tighter. The air was thick with smoke and dust, each breath a struggle. As they moved through the streets, Liv's senses heightened. Broken glass crunched underfoot, metal groaned, and somewhere in the distance, gunfire rang out. Every instinct screamed danger, yet she pushed forward, knowing the lives of her team and the trapped civilians depended on her decisions. Suddenly, a figure darted across the street. Liv froze, raising her rifle. A young boy, no more than 8, pressed a mother's hand into hers and whispered something frantic. The mother's eyes were wide with fear, blood staining her torn clothing. "Stay behind me," Liv barked, sprinting into the open. Bullets whizzed past, striking the ground mere inches from her feet. Her squad followed, creating a protective perimeter around the civilians. In those moments, time stretched. Every heartbeat was counted, every movement calculated. They reached a partially collapsed alley where the family could take cover. Liv quickly assessed the situation. "We can't stay here long. They'll spot us in minutes." She looked at her team. "We move fast. Cover each other, cover the civilians, and don't stop for anything." As they advanced, the air shimmered with heat from nearby fires. The city smelled of smoke, gunpowder, and desperation. Liv's mind raced through tactical options, escape routes, sniper positions, potential ambushes, all while keeping the family protected. Every decision was a tightrope walk between survival and sacrifice. Hours passed as they navigated the labyrinth of the city. Enemy drones hummed above, scanning the streets with deadly precision. Liv hacked one of their control signals with a portable jammer, causing it to veer off course and explode into a nearby building. It bought them a few minutes, but she knew it was temporary. The city was crawling with soldiers, and their path was far from safe. "Captain, incoming," Sergeant Holt warned, his eyes fixed on the rooftop ahead. 3 enemy snipers had positioned themselves strategically. Liv's heart pounded. She calculated their distance, trajectories, and firing patterns in seconds. "Ramirez, suppress fire. Holt, flank left. I'll cover the civilians." The air erupted with gunfire. Bullets tore through walls, shattering glass and concrete. Liv ducked behind a pillar, returning fire with precision. The family huddled behind her, terrified but protected. Each second felt like an eternity, yet Liv's training guided every movement. After a tense firefight, the snipers were neutralized. Liv exhaled, but there was no time to rest. Their mission was far from over. The UAV they were searching for was still out there, somewhere within the heart of the destroyed city. Without it, vital intelligence on missile caches, troop movements, and civilian evacuation zones would be lost. As they moved deeper, Liv's mind flashed to home, her family, her friends, the life she had put on hold to serve. The war was no longer abstract, it was personal. Every explosion, every civilian scream, every choice she made carried weight beyond the battlefield. She felt the heavy burden of command, the constant push to balance mission objectives with the moral imperative to protect lives. Suddenly, they encountered a collapsed street with enemy soldiers visible on both ends. "We can't go through there," Ramirez said, panic creeping into his voice. "They'll pick us off like rats." Liv surveyed the area. There was a narrow path along a partially intact building, but it required crawling through rubble under sniper fire. She knew the risk, but hesitation could doom both her squad and the civilians. "We take the path," she decided, slow and silent. One misstep, we're dead. They moved carefully, the weight of the night pressing down. Every sound, a distant drone, a falling brick, a whisper of wind, threatened to betray them. Liv led the way, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The civilians followed, their tiny hands gripping her fingers, trusting her without question. Midway, an explosion rocked the building next to them. Dust and debris rained down, and a beam fell, narrowly missing Ramirez. Holt pulled him back, shouting over the chaos. Liv's mind raced. They were now trapped between collapsing structures and enemy positions. Survival depended on split-second decisions. "Cover me," she yelled, sprinting the last few meters to the exit. Her squad followed, bullets ricocheting off walls. They burst into a small open plaza, gasping for air, hearts pounding. For a moment, they were free, but the danger was far from over. From the far side of the plaza, they spotted enemy reinforcements advancing. Liv's eyes narrowed. "We can't outrun them. We fight, but strategically. We make it count." She set positions, coordinated angles of fire, and prepared for a battle that could decide the night. Gunfire erupted again, echoing through the ruined city. Liv moved like a shadow, every shot precise, every maneuver calculated. Her squad covered each other, neutralizing threats, but the numbers were overwhelming. Civilians were pushed behind barriers as explosions flared around them. Liv felt the familiar sting of fear, but it was tempered by resolve. They would survive or die trying. Hours dragged as the firefight continued, the city a maze of smoke, fire, and gunfire. Every street, every alleyway seemed to shift, forcing Liv to adapt constantly. She realized that survival wasn't just about fighting, it was about thinking, anticipating, and sacrificing when necessary. Finally, as dawn approached, the enemy began to retreat, leaving behind a city scarred and haunted. Liv's squad was battered, exhausted, but alive. The civilians were unharmed, a small victory amid the devastation. She looked at her team, pride and relief washing over her. But there was no time to celebrate. The UAV was still out there, and extraction was uncertain. Enemy forces could return at any moment. Liv's mind raced ahead, planning the next move. The night had tested them all, but the war was far from over. Dawn broke over the ruined city, painting the streets in pale orange light. For Captain Olivia Liv Carter, it brought no relief, only clarity. Most of her squad was scattered after the night's chaos. Civilians had been moved to temporary safety, and the UAV mission remained incomplete. The city had become a cage, and she was now largely alone. Her boots crunched over shattered glass and rubble as she moved silently down the streets. Smoke curled from collapsed buildings, masking the movements of enemy patrols. Every sound was amplified. The distant hum of drones, the groan of twisted metal, the soft shuffle of rats in the debris. Liv's senses were on high alert, every nerve screaming danger. Her first thought, find the UAV before it falls into enemy hands. Intelligence from the night before had confirmed its location inside a heavily guarded building near the city's industrial sector. But this time, there was no squad to cover her. Every step could be her last. Creeping along the ruined alleyways, Liv recalled the voice messages from home, sent before she deployed. Her younger sister's laughter echoed in her mind, a reminder of everything she was fighting for. She felt a pang of longing and fear, but it sharpened her focus. Survival was no longer optional, it was mandatory. As she approached the target building, the enemy presence became clear. 2 guards patrolled the entrance, rifles sweeping back and forth, their expressions hardened by battle. Liv crouched behind a crumbling wall, eyes scanning, mind calculating. She needed a distraction, a way to slip inside unnoticed. A flare of thought. She spotted a nearby stack of barrels, oily and unstable. With a careful throw, she triggered a small explosion that sent the guards diving for cover. Liv seized the opportunity, sprinting across open ground, ducking behind debris as bullets ricocheted around her. She reached the building's side entrance and slipped inside, heart pounding. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and dust. Broken machinery and fallen beams created a maze of hazards. Liv moved cautiously, checking corners and listening for footsteps. Every sound heightened the tension, a distant shout, the clatter of metal, the buzz of enemy drones overhead. Finally, she found the UAV, partially damaged but intact. Her hands worked quickly, securing it and downloading the critical intelligence onto a portable device. The screen revealed maps of enemy missile positions, troop movements, and evacuation corridors for civilians. Everything needed to save lives and coordinate with her remaining squad. Suddenly, the building shuddered from a nearby explosion. Enemy reinforcements had arrived. Liv's heart raced. She couldn't linger. As she prepared to leave, a patrol emerged from the far corridor. She ducked behind a pillar, holding her breath. Her hand hovered over her sidearm, ready to act. A tense standoff ensued, bullets narrowly missing her as she used shadows and debris for cover. Liv silently dispatched one guard, then another, moving like a ghost through the building. Every movement required precision. One mistake could be fatal. She knew this was no longer a mission, it was survival against overwhelming odds. Emerging from the building, she found herself in an open courtyard. Enemy forces had formed a loose cordon, searching systematically. Liv pressed herself against a crumbling wall, weighing her options. The city's streets offered multiple escape routes, but each was monitored by snipers, drones, and foot patrols. Her mind raced. She needed allies, someone who knew the terrain better than she did. In the distance, she noticed a group of local resistance fighters moving through a side street, armed and alert. They were survivors, civilians turned soldiers by necessity. Risky, but they were her only chance. Liv signaled cautiously, and after tense seconds, they acknowledged her. Together, they devised a plan to move through the city undetected. Using alleyways, underground tunnels, and the ruins of bombed-out buildings, they slipped past enemy patrols, each movement a delicate balance between stealth and speed. Along the way, Liv discovered the human cost of war in intimate detail. Families hiding in basements, children scavenging for food amidst rubble, and elderly civilians too weak to flee. Her heart ached, but there was no time to mourn. Every life she encountered reminded her why survival mattered. Night approached again, bringing cover but also new dangers. Enemy drones scanned the streets with infrared sensors, and patrols moved unpredictably. Liv coordinated with the resistance fighters, using hand signals and improvised tactics to mislead and divert the enemy. Suddenly, a minefield blocked their path. Liv froze. One wrong step could trigger death for her, the resistance fighters, or the civilians she was now guiding. She analyzed the layout carefully, noting disturbed soil and faint markings. With meticulous care, she led them across, step by step, heart hammering with each movement. As they emerged on the other side, a drone hovered dangerously close. Liv's portable jammer barely held it off, and then it crashed spectacularly into a nearby wall. The explosion drew enemy fire, and she realized the city was closing in. Every escape route was now threatened. Despite exhaustion, fear, and hunger, Liv pressed forward. She had become more than a soldier. She was a lifeline. Every decision she made could mean the difference between life and death for those around her. She felt the weight of leadership, the constant tension between mission success and moral responsibility. In the early hours before dawn, they reached a vantage point overlooking the city. Liv took a moment to breathe, scanning the streets below. Smoke rose from burning buildings, the hum of distant artillery echoed. Yet, amidst the devastation, a glimmer of hope appeared. Civilians had begun to move along safe corridors she had coordinated with resistance allies, and the UAV data was secure. But there was no time to rest. Enemy forces were regrouping, and the city was far from safe. Liv's body ached, and fatigue threatened to slow her, but her resolve hardened. She knew the final push would be the most dangerous. Extraction remained uncertain, the enemy unpredictable, and every step forward carried the risk of death. She looked at the horizon, sun faintly rising over a devastated cityscape. The war was relentless, brutal, and unforgiving, and yet she was still standing, alone, behind enemy lines, carrying the weight of countless lives. The first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting long shadows over the ruined city. Captain Olivia "Liv" Carter crouched atop a collapsed building, overlooking the streets below. Her squad was fractured. Most civilians had reached temporary safety, but enemy forces were regrouping, and she was the last line between chaos and disaster. Her hands ached from gripping weapons, and her mind buzzed from hours of adrenaline, yet she moved with unwavering focus. The portable device containing UAV intelligence rested securely in her pack, the lifeline for extraction and the key to saving countless lives. She knew this final push would demand everything she had, both physically and mentally. A sudden hum in the air caught her attention. Enemy drones were returning, scanning with lethal precision. Liv's eyes narrowed. She jammed the signal, forcing one drone to spiral out of control and crash into a nearby building, sending a plume of smoke skyward. That distraction bought a moment, but she knew more drones were on the way. From the vantage point, she spotted a narrow bridge connecting the industrial district to safer extraction points. It was heavily guarded, but it was their only route out. Below, civilians began moving along a route she had coordinated through resistance allies, their faces etched with fear and hope. She couldn't fail them. "Cover fire, Ramirez," she shouted into her comms. The remaining squad members opened fire, suppressing enemy soldiers and drawing attention away from the civilians below. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off steel beams, the air thick with smoke and gunpowder. Liv sprinted down the debris-littered stairwell, weapon ready, eyes scanning for threats. The streets were a war zone of fire and ruin. Buildings burned, twisted metal glinted in the sunlight, and the screams of distant combat echoed like a grim symphony. Liv led her squad forward, weaving through alleyways and abandoned marketplaces. Every step was a calculation, every breath a risk. As they approached the bridge, a sudden explosion rocked the ground. A nearby building collapsed, sending debris raining down. Sergeant Holt shouted orders, shielding civilians with his body, while Liv darted through the chaos, pulling people from harm's way. Her heart pounded. She was exhausted, but the mission wasn't over. Enemy reinforcements poured into the area from multiple directions. Liv assessed the situation rapidly: sniper positions on rooftops, machine guns in abandoned vehicles, and soldiers advancing in formation. She knew they couldn't outgun them. They had to outsmart them. Using signals learned from resistance allies, Liv coordinated a series of diversions. Smoke grenades obscured vision, improvised explosives created noise, and flares drew attention away from the civilians. Her squad moved like a single organism, each soldier covering the other, clearing paths and neutralizing threats with precision. They reached the bridge, but enemy fire intensified. Liv crouched behind a steel barrier, scanning for the most vulnerable points. She noticed a small side passage under the bridge, a narrow tunnel partially flooded but passable. It was risky, but the only way to ensure civilian safety. "Through the tunnel, now," she commanded. The group followed, moving quickly yet cautiously. Bullets slammed into the walls around them, water splashing as they ran. Liv's muscles burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she pressed forward, her determination unshakable. Halfway through, the ground trembled. Another explosion hit nearby, knocking Liv off balance. She quickly regained footing, grabbing a child who had tripped, and continued forward. Every second felt stretched, every movement critical. The tunnel felt endless, and enemy shouts grew louder above. Finally, they emerged on the other side. The bridge was behind them, smoke curling upward. Civilians began moving toward temporary safety zones. Liv allowed herself a brief glance back. The city was still engulfed in fire and chaos, but they had made it this far. She knew extraction was imminent. Jets thundered overhead, signaling Allied support. But the final challenge remained: covering the civilians until the extraction team could arrive. Liv planted herself in the open, drawing enemy attention away from those fleeing. Bullets tore past her, dust and debris kicking up around her, yet she moved with precision, taking out threats with deadly accuracy. Her squad rallied around her, securing the perimeter. Ramirez fired suppressive shots, Holt coordinated civilians, and Liv led counterattacks. The chaos seemed endless, yet every action was deliberate, every shot calculated. Exhaustion was overwhelming, but giving up was never an option. Minutes felt like hours as they held the bridge. Then, the unmistakable roar of jets overhead signaled reinforcements. Precision airstrikes targeted enemy positions, scattering soldiers and giving the civilians a clear path. Liv's eyes welled with relief, but she remained focused. Extraction was still risky. Finally, armored vehicles arrived, ushering civilians and remaining squad members to safety. Liv handed over the UAV device, ensuring the intelligence would reach command intact. She scanned the horizon one last time. The city she had fought through lay in ruins, but lives had been saved. As she climbed into the armored vehicle, exhaustion overtook her. Her uniform was torn, her body bruised, her hands scorched from handling weapons and debris, but her spirit remained unbroken. She looked at the civilians, their faces showing fear, relief, and gratitude. She had risked everything, and she had survived. Yet, in her mind, she knew the war was far from over. The city, the country, the world, everything had changed. She had been forged in the fire of war, tested to the limits of endurance, morality, and courage. Every decision, every sacrifice had brought her here. As the vehicle drove away, the sun fully rose, illuminating the devastation. Smoke curled into the sky like dark ribbons. Liv leaned back, closing her eyes for a brief moment. She had faced death, darkness, and impossible odds. She had survived, and in surviving, she had given others a chance to live. Her thoughts drifted home, to family, friends, and a world that might never truly understand the sacrifices made in the shadows of war. But that didn't matter. She had fulfilled her mission, she had protected lives, and she had proven that courage, determination, and the refusal to give up could overcome even the deadliest of conflicts.